Welcome to Bob Larson Live. Tonight, help. I have solar eclipse sickness. Now, we did a show on this a couple of weeks ago. I hope you were watching. Go back and look at it again. People will not let go of this thing. The great solar eclipse of 2024 has come and gone. And now some say they are suffering from emotional and physical consequences of having experienced the eclipse. We are taking chats tonight. We got some interesting ones out there. Free Wayne, hello, Bob. Idra, welcome to everybody from the beautiful Pacific Northwest when it's not raining. I'm praying for a broadcast tonight and no technical difficulties. Brian says, much love. The Watermelon Beast doesn't say anything. He's just there. Hi, Adrian. Hello, everybody. Jeremy. Hi. Wendy. Hi. Brandon. Hello. It's Lucifer here. Are things with everyone? Make sure you repent it in full, because if not, your souls will be mined. Which Jeremy says, why ask why if you don't know why? If you know why, then why ask? Laughing out loud. I don't know. Corey, Bob, can you talk about the spiritual significance of the eclipse? That's exactly what I'm here to do tonight. Miguel says, have you ever used canola oil for an exorcism? I always use anointing, but I'll tell you a little interesting story. Some years ago, not that long ago, I had the privilege and honor of a lifetime dream of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, 20,000 feet high, the tallest mountain on the continent of Africa. And we got up there and we were at 16,000 feet overnight. I don't think I've ever told this story before. And so the guy who was the leader of this whole thing, we were sitting in the tent freezing and talking about the final ascent the next day. And he's supposed to be a Christian, because he'd been talking about the Lord. Then he starts talking about all the witchcraft in his family. And I decided, if this is the guy who's going to take me straight up a cliff on a final ascent in a life and death situation tomorrow, I don't want any curses in this man's life. And I didn't have any anointing oil with me, but I used butter. Okay, butter at 16,500 feet of Mount Kilimanjaro. There's a story for you. Okay, Corey says, well, I'm going to talk about the Miguel. Like and share. Howdy, guys. Wendy, people are obsessed. Hello, Mr. Bob, that guy. Tanya, blessings the soldiers march into heaven. Tatiana, I'm a new supporter. Thank you. Brandon, I don't know what this is about. Fort Lauderdale. Nina, hi, Bob. Good to hear from you, Nina. And Donna, good evening, Mr. Larson. God bless you. All right. I have solar sickness. What is that all about? Well, it's the hangover from the eclipse. It supposedly causes emotional and physical consequences of having experienced the eclipse. So let me see if you got the symptoms. They range from supposed changes in a woman's monthly cycle. I didn't write that, it's on the internet, to extreme fatigue and disorientation. And apparently some animals have run amok when darkness filled the skies. But no matter what's going on physiologically, I say the spiritual fallout is worse. And I'm asking a very pointed question tonight. Who is going to hold accountable all the unbiblical and unscientific conclusions of prophecy preachers who made outlandish, I could be less gracious and use more descriptive adjectives, outlandish claims? So I think this solar sickness is not only physical, it's also spiritual. Now, a couple of things you do need to know. If you've ever wanted to have a virtual or in-person encounter with me, particularly a virtual one, and you've seen other people get free and get delivered right here on Bob Larson Live, or you've heard me talk about it and you say, I would like to have an encounter with Bob, this is your opportunity for the spring season. We're going to do something we call the Get Free, Stay Free, Live Free bundle of opportunity. And so if you will be watching your email tomorrow, you'll see this very special offer to put together a regular encounter session with me, plus something we've had for a long time. I haven't talked much about it. It is a spiritual life coaching session in which I take a look with my many years of experience into your life and what's going on. This is not casting out demons. This is figuring out you as a person, the dynamics of your family of origin and your current family and everything else that works in your life and where you're going and what your destiny is going to be and help you to find it. So you get both in a very special bundle for a lower suggested donation than normal, because we want to reach people who are struggling. So if you are, please get in touch with us, watch tomorrow, or just go to the website, boblarson.org. Would you do that, please? And of course, if you want to be on I Had a Demon right here and let me minister to you live in person, I would love to do that. Just go to I Have a Demon at boblarson.org and let us know what your story is. Now, like and share, hit that notification bell. All of that helps us to grow this ministry. I asked a pretty pointed question a moment ago, and I'm going to get to the consequences of that in just a moment. But if you have not been to Exdunamis recently, or if you have not yet become a member of Exdunamis, it's a great way to help this ministry. Your monthly gift of $20 or more supports the ministry, and you have access to hundreds of videos. Now, we are uploading all kinds of new videos. Have you seen the new group of videos that we call Moments with Bob and Laura, where we kind of sit down literally at our kitchen table and talk about spiritual issues, all the questions you've wanted to know about. We banter back and forth. It's really very interesting. And then also the new one, the Exorcist Chronicles. Then, of course, you also have this very special feature, which is monthly, something unique. And last month and this month, we've been airing the 2-hour exorcism of a gentleman who has an extraordinary story. And this month is the part 2 of his account of being involved in some of the darkest forms of the occult. I've described it as the youngest person I've ever known to conjure more demons than I've ever known anybody of his age to deliberately conjure. And most of them were very dark demons. I want you to take a quick look at a short sample of this exorcism. This is the exorcism of Haitian Voodoo. I don't care what language. See, and if you have not heard, after 3 months of being in a cast and a walking cast, I'm out. I am walking around. We're going to get back on the road again. It's just a month away. Baltimore New Life Sanctuary, my good friend, Pastor Blaine Cuban. I'm going to be there on May the 17th. I'm going to come in early a couple of days to do in-person encounters. Is this your chance to have one without flying all the way to Phoenix, Arizona? So go to our website, boblarson.org. And then on July the 19th, I'm going to be in Edmonton, Alberta. And we have more dates coming in the fall. Tanya, blessings to all the soldiers of God marching to heaven. Tatiana, I'm a new supporter. I think I got that one. We miss you in Fort Lauderdale. Wendy, I'm going to be there with my good friend Mark Chase in September. More about that, go to our website. Donna says, Belding, Michigan needs you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And Wendy says, hi, Nina. How do you know Nina? Anyway, Jeremy says, if you don't know what it is, if you don't know why, that is why you asked. Yet if you know why, then you will teach someone to ask why. Okay, there's great wisdom. Tanya. Hey, Bob, thank you for obeying the Lord. And marine workouts, you better believe. In April, God bless you. So good to see you and to hear from you. Blessings for everyone in Killeen, Texas. Now, what about this whole thing of this solar sickness? Well, you know, I've been dealing for 3 months with recovery from foot surgery, as I just said. Just when I was getting to feel better, boom, solar eclipse hit me. I've been feeling well since Monday. Weird feelings, fatigue, insomnia, appetite issues. Even our two cats are acting strangely. So I looked on the internet where all truth lies, and I found a diagnosis for what I'm going through. It's called eclipse sickness. And experts say, here's the good news. I will recover. I will not feel like this again until August 23, 2044, the next eclipse. And thank God, in Phoenix, Arizona, we only saw 78% of an eclipse. I can just imagine what the rest of you have been through. But the worst part about solar sickness is this, the hangover from what I call the prophetic solar sickness syndrome. Do I need to say that again? The prophetic solar eclipse syndrome. Now, Laura and I did watch the solar eclipse, and we had the right glasses and everything. And we said that while we were watching this, we were just chatting about, the craziness surrounding this solar eclipse come from within the New Age community and all the astrologers. I mean, they're bonkers over this. But people in the Christian community, you would hope would have, a little more logical approach to this. Not so. So just for a minute, let's take a look at eclipses in history. Well, there have been eclipses, of course, for millennia, and in many ancient cultures, solar eclipses were seen as ominous omens or signs of impending doom. All the sudden darkening of the sky would cause fear, panic. Whole populations, whole nations panic. Well, they didn't understand the scientific explanation behind the phenomenon. And there are instances in history where solar eclipses coincided with or preceded very significant political events, and we're going to talk about that. For example, the sudden darkness caused by an eclipse was often interpreted as a sign of displeasure from the gods, and that often led to political upheaval, even the downfall of rulers. But for many ancient people, solar eclipses had profound religious significance. They were sometimes interpreted as battles between cosmic forces or as messages from the gods. In some cases, rituals or sacrifices, often human sacrifices, particularly the Mesoamerican cultures, they were performed to appease the gods and ensure their protection. More about that in a moment. Dr. Bob Walking, somebody's got a little emoji there, Yisa, thank you. Wyatt Burr, okay. You picked the name, I didn't. What are the deities in Canaan and Phoenicia that you've dealt with? The usual suspects, people like Baal and Moloch. Those are the two most common. Soldier of the Rose. The exorcism of the young man made me so angry we cannot begin to fathom the evil of the enemy. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Watermelon Beast. Tell me about the deliverance with the guy that worshipped the sun and stared into it. Didn't it cause technical problems at your seminar? Actually, that's an interesting story. So I was dealing with this guy who was manifesting these demons. And he had gotten into very obscure esoteric aspects of the occult, and in particular, Egyptian black magic. And he talked about going outside, and I've done a show previously on this, and in that show, I talked about people who do sun gazing. So if you go to our archives and look, you'll see that show on sun gazing. But anyway, this guy was in it deep. Well, this demon manifested, and he talked about how he could stare straight at the sun, nothing stopping the sun's rays. I mean, no special glasses, anything. And staring at it for hours. Now, by the way, that's also being done by a lot of people in this sun-gazing cult. And it's to prove the power of the god of the sun. And so this Ra spirit, which is the ancient Egyptian sun god. So Ra manifests. And the moment Ra manifested, everybody in the room started weaving back and forth. We were all trying to catch our balance. I was in Alaska, and it was an honest-to-goodness earthquake that happened when Ra manifested. And you can take that for what it's worth, but it happened. We actually captured it on video. So that's the story, Soldier of the Cross, the exorcism of that young man. Well, I think we got to that, and we got to Wyatt Bird Rick. I just had to check the second coming didn't happen. I've been seeing a lot of Christians on live chats. Brittany, the eclipse was directly over me. I felt nauseous, headaches. My body just isn't right. I'm also more clumsy than Area. I hope you haven't been smoking some weed, and I don't know what's going on here. Let's take a look at history for a moment, okay? Because I talked about that a moment ago. So, ancient China. In China, solar eclipses were associated with the health and success of the emperor. They took it very seriously. Failing to predict an eclipse meant putting the ruler in danger. So there's this ancient legend of two astrologers, Si and Ho. They were executed for failing to predict the solar eclipse. And historians believe that the eclipse that they failed to forecast actually occurred. They got the date, October 22, 2134 BC, which apparently is the oldest solar eclipse ever recorded in human history. But it's not just the Chinese and ancient Samaria and Mesopotamia and Babylon. They believed that solar eclipses were bad omens, but especially for kings and rulers. Predicting solar eclipses enable them, and this is what they did, to seat substitute kings during solar eclipses with the hope that the temporary king would face the angers of God rather than the real king. In other words, here's the throne, and the real king doesn't sit there. He lets somebody else take the wrath of the gods through the eclipse, and he's got to sit there. Then when the eclipse is over with, he reclaims his throne. You think that's funny? It's laughable. It's ridiculous. We're going to talk about what Christians are doing in a moment, and in some ways, it's worse. Tatiana, I just got a hold of Larson's book of spiritual warfare. There's a copy of it right there. And this is a 500-page book. One of the most important books I've ever written. Go to our website, look at our resources, get yourself a copy. Tatiana also says, yes, that was years ago in Anchorage, Alaska, right? Yes, I think he had Raw. Yes, that's the story. So, Soldier of the Crosses, I was typing that when you were talking about the exorcism you featured on Ex Dunamis. Sorry for the ambiguity, but it could be an exorcism, really. What about Rastafari? I'm not sure why anybody's asking about Rastafarianism. That's the Jamaican-originated cult. It was a Back to Africa cult. A guy named Marcus Garvey started it. He eventually moved to the United States and started some Black Power movements at the turn of the century. I think I talk about that in my book of cults. Is the Black Sun involved with this eclipse? Don't know. Rick, I just had to check the second coming in. Oh, we got that a little earlier. Oh, this is interesting. It's a good point. People were talking about the Y2K eclipse after it happened. Everything was back to normal. Birds saw the front porch light and rushed home to nest. Now, let me tell you a little story about that I don't think I have ever told, okay? So when the new millennium came, the year 2000, rolled the clock back 24 years, I had a series on TBN, the Trinity Broadcasting Network. And so as that was coming, everybody was freaking out. It was Y2K, and the world was coming to an end. All the computers were going to shut down. And we didn't even have iPhones then to worry about. So everything was going to totally shut down. Everything was going to come to an end. So Paul Crouch was suffering, TBN was suffering a huge shortfall in giving because people weren't giving to ministries because they thought the end was coming. They were, I guess, spending or hoarding what they had. So Paul Crouch called me up, asked me to come on TBN and go on and tell people that Y2K was not the end of the world. Now, that's what happened back then. I don't think that's a story I've ever told. And yet, look today, quite the opposite. The people who are gaga over this eclipse are being invited on major television networks, I don't know about TBN, but many of the others, to talk about their ludicrous predictions. So we talked about the Chinese, we talked about the Babylonians, let's talk about the Romans. So one of the most famous examples of an eclipse is in the ancient world Finding meaning in the skies. That was 44 BC. A comet appeared. Not an eclipse, but a comet appeared over Italy just 4 months after the assassination of Julius Caesar. Now, Pliny the Elder, which was a very famous Roman author, he claimed the comet was visible for a week and was so bright it could be spotted in the middle of the day. Well, Romans, pagans, one of the most idolatrous nations that's ever existed. I mean, they were really accommodating to every culture that they conquered and would add all their gods. So you had these Greco-Roman gods and Egyptian gods and everything else. So they interpreted it as a sign that Caesar had ascended to the heavens and taken his seat among the gods of Rome. And his deification as a result was made official by a vote of the Roman Senate less than 2 years later. All right? That's the way these people look about it. Tiffany says, Pastor Bob, I've been having scary dreams again. I've been hearing voices in my head. I don't know what the voices are saying. Well, I don't know whether you're having a mental health issue of some kind. I don't know whether there's some emotional stress that you're experiencing or dissociative behavior or whatever, but you really need to get some ministry. So you can either set up a virtual encounter with me, or you can get with one of our associate ministers that I've trained all these people, or get in touch with one of our Do What Jesus Did teams, maybe within a day's drive of you, and you can get the kind of help that you need. Is hoodoo, which is another name for voodoo, spiritual medicine or witchcraft? It's witchcraft, sir, period. So let's talk about these prophetic preachers. Let's talk about the mistakes that they've made with this particular eclipse. Now, again, we talked about some of this 2 weeks ago, but we're going to refer back to some of that, but we're going to add stuff to it. So the first thing, the X path of solar eclipses of 2017 and 2014, all right? So in 2017, it went this way. In 2014, it went that way. In the United States of America, in the North American continent, nowhere else in the world, although it has happened. We'll get to that a little later in other parts of the world. So NASA, National Aeronautics Space Administration, says there's been an average of, get this, 2.5 eclipses per year over the last 1,000 years. So the phenomenon of 2 eclipses crossing paths is not that unusual. It's happened before. In fact, if you take a look at a map of the eclipses, the path between 2001 and 2025, an X, it's clear that eclipses frequently cross paths. Now get this, of the 15 solar eclipses during this span of time, only 2 did not cross paths. Now, I did a little research for tonight, okay? I'm not making this up. This information is available. What's with these prophecy preachers who don't bother to do some simple research and see whether or not what they're telling people is legitimate? Oh, they got a word from God. Okay, right? Well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And if it's not true, perhaps they didn't. Annie says, I remember you being on TBN. I used to watch Paul and Jan all the time, but to be honest, I don't watch TV anymore. I haven't for 5 years. There's nothing fit to watch. Okay. All right, Miguel, Bob, they will take you to the courts of heaven for speaking. Okay, Miguel. I'm sorry, that one did crack me up. They will take you to the courts of heaven for dissing eclipse prophecies. All right, so we talked about the X thing. But the other thing most of these guys talk about is that this eclipse passed over 7 cities in the U.S. named Nineveh. Ooh, the Mesopotamian city judged in the book of Jonah. Well, that's not true. We pointed out 2 weeks ago there are actually 8 cities in America with that name, and only 2 of them were actually in the eclipse path. Do your homework, guys. Number 3. This one really got me. This is a new one. There's a very prominent preacher who made a case that the eclipse entered North America at Eagle Pass, Texas, where all the illegals are coming in and all the controversy is, and where Joe Biden's now going to go build a wall, maybe. I don't know. No, it didn't enter at Eagle Pass. It entered North America and Mexico. Oh, but that doesn't fit into prophetic significance. It has to be about God's judgment on America. The rest of the world, God's not concerned about them as much as he is about the United States of America. We're the important ones because we're the ones who listen to these preachers. Now, obviously, they have a worldwide audience, so some of them listen there. But the fourth thing I want to point out to you is that some of these prophets have used the date of 408, April the 8th, 0408. All right, so there's this one very popular prophetic preacher. I'm not naming names tonight. He said this was connected to Exodus 4:8. Really? Just Exodus 4:8? What about the rest of the world? If you have not traveled internationally, you may not know the rest of the world inverts the month and the day. Canadians do it. Most of everybody else does it. My friends down in Australia, you do it. The eclipse occurred on 8/4, not 4/8. Why Exodus 4:8? So I just decided I would look up Matthew 4:8. Okay? Matthew 4:8. Listen for this prophetic significance about the eclipse. The devil took him to an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. What? That has nothing to do with an eclipse. Number 5. The book of Revelation does make it clear that when the last days come, the moon will turn blood red. That's why so many guys sold so many books back in 2000, 7 years ago, in 17. My friend, we have had many lunar eclipses that turned the moon red. Or the sun will turn black like sackcloth, and well, there you go. So some say, well, this means a total eclipse signifies that Christ will come again. Well, yeah, it does. He is going to come again. But do we really need an eclipse to know that Jesus is coming soon? Tatiana says, people are easy to control when they are fearful. Pastors know this. Well, I hate to say some of them probably do that. Yes, scare people, and the donations go like that. Irish Cream Spring Green. Pastor Bob, thank you so much for helping me years ago when we were part of your ministry for a short time. We learned a lot. Thank you so much for helping others and a great teacher. By the way, Pastor Bob, I'm still free and living for God. Susan, God bless you. So good to hear from you. She's part of our team up in Seattle. She says, thank you for your voice of sanity. Super Drag USA, is there a correlation between King Solomon and Kabbalah? Kabbalah would like to make you think so, the people who do that. So with the Freemasons, they base Freemasonry supposedly on the Masons who built Solomon's temple. And that's all invoked, of course, in Freemasonry, and a lot of people like to go back to that. There's no connection there. Bare necessities. My mom captured a round, grayish, smoky, thin mist that visits her front porch. Unsure what this is, and it may move in some instances. Watermelon Bee says, do they have a small claims court in heaven? You know, we're not here to make fun of people tonight, but some of this stuff, you just have to laugh a little bit at it. It gets to be pretty ridiculous after a while. All right, so what do we make of all of this? Let me try to draw some conclusions. All of these end time predictions are rooted in a North American evangelical apocalyptic viewpoint. That's the fact. All right? And for those of you who are a little older, remember where this all started back in the 80s with Hal Lindsey's very popular book, The Late Great Planet Earth. That's what got this whole thing going. Lindsay intimated that the apocalypse would occur in the 1980s, and it was pretty sure. I think he's like 94 now. I haven't had a chance to speak to him lately and ask, but so to make this argument, Hal, and he was a good guy, I knew Hal, and I had him on my radio show, and I think he was really trying to point out to people the rise of the Satanism movement then that really came to the forefront in the 60s with Anton LaVey, and he had good intentions, but what he did was to make his argument by stitching together disparate events, many of them, all kinds of phenomena to construct an apocalyptic narrative. And it included Soviet helicopters, the establishment of the State of Israel, I think that's legitimate, and nuclear warfare. Now, like I said, Hal was not a bad guy. I really don't think he was as irresponsible as many of the prophecy preachers are today. I think he meant well. But he was wrong. The 1980s did not bring about the end of the world. Some of you weren't even born yet. Obviously, it didn't end. But here's what you need to understand about this kind of thinking. It seeks significance in random events, like eclipses. And that sort of thing has, brought us the Millerites. It actually brought us the Adventist movement in the beginnings. It brought us Mormonism. It brought us all this millennialism of the 19th century because people were reading into things. Jehovah's Witnesses, etc. There are many cults and many religious groups out there. Many of them have backed away from that early stuff. But the problem is, this is the way the prophetic industry operates. And I'm not, just attacking people in the prophetic today. I'm not really trying to attack anybody. I'm saying, can we get some balance here? Now, for those of you who really want to nail me down, I am not a cessationist. I'm what you might call a conditional continualist, okay? Whatever you want to call me, if you want to put labels on it. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who speak very prophetically in the sense of like the voices of old. They have determination, bravery. They see things that other people do not see. I don't think they walk around having constant visions of demons and angels like some of them claim. I don't think they're going to heaven every other night. And I don't think Jesus comes down and sits at the foot of their bed. And some of this stuff gets really out there. It's created a whole prophetic industry. But here's the issue. What are we looking toward? Are we seeking significance in random events like eclipses? Or are we focused on the Word of God? Are we trying to create an industry, an economic enterprise based upon fear? Or are we giving hope in Jesus Christ? And a good example of that I just gave you, the example of the Eclipse Crossings in 2017 and 2024, Jeremy. What about the Waco and Waco? Yes, what about that, man? That was a terrible situation. Bare necessity. Does Jesus know when the end of the world is? He said, my Father alone knows. Daniel, Pastor Bob's down to say things that other pastors never would. Oh, Jeremy, I'm not going to talk about the red heifer. Don't even get me to go there. The red heifer to be sacrificed in Jerusalem at the eclipse. This is nonsense. Okay? Nonsense. Is there a correlation? We got King Solomon, the Kabbalah. I have to watch myself. I'm trying to be really balanced tonight, but some of this stuff is just so out there. You wonder where people get it. And nobody holds them accountable. Nobody asks them to give proof about their conclusion because they have a word from God. How are you going to argue with that? They see patterns emerge where they look for it. Let me say to you, it's the motive of the seeker that draws the conclusions buttressing a foregone conclusion. I think I need to say that again. People see emerging patterns when they are looking for an emerging pattern that's consistent with the paradigm that they've already developed. And so every conclusion buttresses a foregone conclusion. And concern about the second coming of Jesus Christ is a legitimate topic. Of course it is. It was undeniably an issue of the authors of the New Testament. They talked about the second coming. And there was a total agreement among these authors about timing. But what we get in the Gospels is very different from what we get in the letters of Paul. They were all trying to figure this out. And both of these are quite different, what's found in the book of Revelation. But they did share a sense that the timing of the end was mysterious and unknowable. And that's the issue. People want to know with some proximity how close we are when it's going to happen. Is it interesting speculation? Obviously. Is it predictable? No. So what's behind all of this spurious speculation? I got to be careful here because somebody's going to be upset, but that's my job and I have to do it, okay? Let's just be honest. There's a new theory in prophetic circles, not all prophetic circles, but some, that a prophecy needs only to be approximately correct. Did you hear me? And they have very elaborate explanations for this. Well, it doesn't have to be 100% correct. Approximately correct. And then they further that paradigm by saying the individual speaking may have an imperfect manifestation of their gift. They're a work in progress. So the accuracy of their gift and their prophecies is still on the assembly line. Really? So let's go back to the Bible. Deuteronomy 18:20. But a prophet who presumes to speak in my name anything I have not commanded, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, is to be put to death. Has that changed in New Testament times? There are actually people in the strongly prophetic movement, and I would contrast that to maybe a kind of legitimate prophetic movement that isn't as far out as the others are. They actually believe that Deuteronomy 18 doesn't apply anymore. This is a different dispensation, and the gifts of the Spirit operate differently from the gifts that the Old Testament prophets had. So it isn't a matter of total, absolute, unalterable, 100% accuracy. So let's talk about this passage. So this is the passage where Moses is instructing Israel about prophets and how to discern the true from the false. The purpose of Deuteronomy is just simply to emphasize the seriousness of falsely claiming to speak for God or delivering messages from other gods. This was serious. It was severe. In fact, ancient Israel viewed this offense so falsely that claiming divine authority invoked capital punishment. Okay? Rick says, I'm not pre-trib or post-trib, I'm pan-trib. Pan-trib, whatever pans out. Did you originate that, or did you hear that somewhere? Look to today, preach the gospel until his return. Bare necessity. People are freaking out about that. The Euphrates River drying up and 6 columns appear to have been led to a cave. Oh, spare me. Miguel, you have a lot to catch up with your book of cults. Hey, Miguel, you're on a roll tonight. Tatiana, this generation seeks a sign. Yeah. Donna, we can't figure it out. Silver Hunter, the body of Christ should just be waiting and watching for the second to come in, and don't try to figure it all out. That's going to cause stress and anxiety. Okay. Okay. And Miguel said, I feel, therefore, it's prophecy. I feel that the eclipse will be this, that, and maybe they shouldn't release words on YouTube if they feel it. All right. So let's go to something we do know. The reference to Noah. Now we know one thing for sure. The end is clearly described in Matthew 24, verse 36. But let's quote it. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not know until the flood came and took them all away, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. Let's focus on the word wickedness, the evil that was there. What is this evil of which Jesus speaks? And he's comparing his return to the days of Noah. In the time of Noah, evil was rampant. Here's what Genesis 4:4 says. Let's look it up. Okay. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was evil continually. Genesis 6 says, the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. So Jesus is pointing out just a simple truth. The people of Noah's day were totally depraved. And yes, I agree, we're not far from that today. We are much closer to it than we've ever been in my lifetime. I've never seen anything like the world that we now live in. Not just in America, around the world. But these people in Noah's day were not the least bit concerned about it. And all you have to do is get on TikTok. Just get on YouTube. See the stuff that's out there coming from the secular community. They're not concerned. They tout, they find pleasure in, they glorify the most abominable kinds of evil. But here's the thing. In the days of Noah, they carried on with their lives. They were not thinking about God. Noah's building this ark. They're mocking him, laughing at him. And the depravity and the ungodliness of the entire world was enough that the Lord regretted that he had made man. Genesis 6:6. It may be that the evil, I'm just throwing this out there because this is a whole other different topic, is described in Genesis 6:1-4. Now, maybe that was the real reason for the blood, the cohabitation of humans and demons, the Nephilim thing. The sons of God came into the daughters of men and they bore children to them. Was it that the bloodline of humanity could have been so corrupted with this hybrid human-demon offspring that destroying all life was the only option left? Perhaps, but that's another day, another topic. Here's what I'm trying to get across. We don't need prophetic speculation about an eclipse to understand the signs of the end of the age of what the Word of God has already told us. This is sufficient. Excuse me, can I say that? This is sufficient. We don't need X's of eclipses and red heifers to tell us Jesus is coming. Look around you. 2 Timothy 3:1-4. Gives a very clear picture. But mark this, there will be terrible times. How many of you think we live in terrible times? I do. Terrible times. Not just in America, the world. Let's get this xenophobic attitude out of our mind. Myopic view we have of American culture being the most important culture on earth. It's an important culture. I love America. I'm an uber patriot about this country, but still, we're not the only people there. There will be terrible times in the last days. Now look what it says. This is what we need to be heeding, not X's, not bovines. It says people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And friend, you don't need an eclipse to make it very clear, to make a case that we are in the last days. And solar sickness It's not just an emotional and physical condition. It's a spiritual condition, and it's contagious, and I don't want you to have it. By the way, remember what I said right at the beginning? You're going to get an email tomorrow. If you're on our email list, pay heed to it. If you've ever wanted to have a virtual encounter with me, we're going to do something very special. We can only do this just for a couple of weeks. That's good preaching. Thank you so much, Matthew. Donna, total chaos. No kingdom men. Yesa, it's called common sense. Beyond the Veil Paranormal. I think they're already constructing the temple in the real location. Maybe. Bare Necessities. I love all your books. Thank you very much. I encourage you to get as many of our books as is possible. They don't go into this kind of stuff. We deal in facts. We deal in reality. We deal in observable things, replicable things, things that can be documented, and all things that can be backed up by the Word of God, because that's really what our plumb line is. So here's the deal. If you're not a Christian, and many of you aren't, and you're listening to all this stuff, you must be thinking, are these Christians all nuts? No, they're not. Are these Christians all extremists? No, they're not. Well, what's the real deal? Read the Bible. Start out with the Gospel of John. Read the Synoptic Gospels, which means Matthew, Mark, Luke. And just start to follow Jesus. If we can help you, you got questions, get in touch with us. You got demons, we're here to help you. You're spiritually oppressed and tormented, we'll reach out to you. I already said right at the beginning the many ways that we can help you. And thank you who support our ministry for helping us. Go to boblarson.org, click on donate, pick up that cell phone. Text the word give to 833-361-4711. And be watching next week. Our plan is to have what some say is America's most dangerous preacher on the show with me, Pastor Greg Locke. That's going to be an interesting night. In the meantime, we can only do what we do. We can only reach out to people and offer them the hope of the Lord Jesus Christ and freedom from the bondage they're in. If you support us, $20 a month will go a long way if we get enough of you to do it. And why not enjoy the benefits of Ex Dunamis, hundreds of videos at the same time to grow in the Lord. And if you've never enrolled at Bob Larson University, do it. It's no nonsense. It's not froth. It's not foam off the top. It's meat, serious meat, for you to learn what spiritual warfare is all about. Remember, be watching the email for the Get Free Special Virtual Bundle. And listen, we've been talking about a lot of controversial things tonight. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, though I allude to some obvious individuals, but I don't want you to know who they are, and I'm not calling names, and I'm not trying to discredit any particular ministry. I'm just saying that even with some good ministries, people get carried away into things that are really not essential. They're really not part of the gospel, which is what we need to focus on. So I just encourage those who have been caught up in these things. Oh, it's interesting. It's fascinating. It's really interesting to talk about. But we're told to do things which are godly edifying in faith. Don't give heed to endless genealogies, which is what the Jews did. They just minutely wanted to know all these intricacies of who they could belong to make sure they got back to Abraham. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to check this, check that. We're to follow Jesus. Do that, and you'll get free, stay free, and live free.
Your financial support and prayers make it possible for us to bring hope for the hurting and freedom for the regarding ministry outreaches. Go to boblarson.org. or call 303-980-1511.